We start with Abby having some sort of nightmare flashback about the time she found her daddy's brains all over the walls of their raided compound 5 years ago. Before waking up and telling all her ex-Firefly mates that she don't care about how fortified that pussy old sanctuary city is, because they're going to go down there and kill that Joel fella, or given he killed her Dr. Daddy for trying to hack up a teenage girl in order to synthesise a global cure for murderous mushroom monsters and shit. Anyway, in said sanctuary city of Jackson, local Asian pretty boy Jesse just can't believe he sucks at kissing so much that his ex-girlfriend is now gay and seemingly prefers to snog little lesbians with giant foreheads. And after warning her that the town's now on alert after some patrol found the mushroom fellas are now hiding under their dead frozen mates to stay warm and alive out there outside the perimeter, she says she wants to go on patrol with Joel, given they're kind of sort of on speaking terms again after she snapped at him for protecting her honour against a straight white homophobic bigot guy last epi.
Okay.
But unfortunately, he's already gone out with Dina, given she just spent the whole morning sleeping off a giant hangover. Speaking of homophobic bigots, said homophobic bigot totally cucks out and grovels to Ellie for making drunken comments about her sapphic suitors. Well, despite him not really appearing all that drunk and just sounding totally based AF to be fair. Whilst elsewhere over on the mountain, dopey Abby has a little slip down the snow without a sled and just ends up rousing a bunch of very hangry mushroom monsters who totally want her soft warm meat for their breakfast. And turns out there's bloody thousands of the things, who soon chase her over walls and through tiny pathetic fences. And it looks like it's curtains for the bitter and twisted young lady who's wasted 5 years of her life hunting down a guy across the country who she doesn't even know is even alive at this point, and in a post-apocalyptic hellscape world where anyone could die at any minute. No! But luckily, she's totally saved in the nick of time by random Chilean-looking stranger, who takes her back to a small barn and who soon overhears his patrol partner call him Joel. And she just can't believe she's just coincidentally run into the very man she's been travelling the country looking for 5 years, nor that he's now bloody gone and saved her life, isn't she? Because that's like super convenient, but also emotionally confusing, yo. But because they're too far out and don't really want to lead the horde of rampaging cannibals back to Jackson, a cunning Abby gets her game face on and suggests instead going back to her place up the mountain, where all her heavily armed and geared up mates are just chilling out at. And they'll all definitely totally come and help you defend your little comic community, lol, trust me bro. Meanwhile, Ellie and Jesse hole up out of the storm in an old outpost, whilst Tommy just whines about not being able to radio any of his teams out in the storm, and just knew he shouldn't have listened to his chocolatey commie wife Bird and employed a diversity hire to manage the comms.
They see me rolling, they hate it.
Anyway, the townsfolk start reinforcing the city, before finding them cordyceps spores in the pipework, and soon realise all them fungals on bozos are now all heading their way, given the spores are communicating with them over long distances because reasons. So naturally, they lose their shit and draw even more attention to themselves by literally ringing the dinner bell, thereby sending the whole town into chaos. And after getting all the women and kiddies down underground, deploying their defences and just generally getting tooled up, the monsters finally arrive as the commies start unleashing more lead than handsome Luigi at a healthcare professional. Allegedly. Or, as it's otherwise known I guess, a typical Tuesday morning in Chicago. After blowing the first wave to Kingdom Come and forcing them to do what I did last night after a particularly successful Tinder date, they totally smashed through the rear, as a roided out Hulk type mushroom fella totally comes to join the party.
Oh shit, not good.
Meanwhile, Joel and Dina see the town lit up from the mountain and naturally want to go back to save their loved ones, and mainly their mutual loved one with a fetal alcohol syndrome. But Abby just says, stop waffling on about wanting to find your phony fakey kind of sort of daughter kid and your little lovesick lesbian bae, and let's just get over to my tooled up cabin already, who'll give it's just only up the road. Elsewhere, Tommy gets tooled up himself, but this time with a giant fuck off flamethrower, and somehow survives being down in the street amongst hordes of undead fellas because insane plot armour, bro. And as his nameless rooftop colleagues don't quite have the same protag privilege, they go and get themselves munched up and tackled off fucking ledges.
Damn!
Now backed into a corner after distracting the Hulk type monster from going after his hot chocky girly bae, Tommy lights his ass up with more heat than a California wildfire. And although said fire doesn't seem to be very effective against giant fuck off ground grass type Pokemonsters, he's saved in the nick of time by a second dose of laughably insane plot armour, as a fella just drops down dead beside him and just before he can rip his goddamn head off.
It was super easy, barely an inconvenience.
Speaking of lazy writing, Maria is also just out here running through the streets and past dying peeps getting munched up, totally A-OK, and soon races to let out a pack of hungry dogs to help him against the naughty mushy funky fellas. Meanwhile, Abby and her unsuspecting victims soon arrive at their base, as she barely even lets poor 60-year-old Joel get warmed up before having him taken hostage and knocking Dina out with a tranquilizer serum thing. Naturally, he wonders what the frig is going on here, given it's only episode 2 and already his entire community is on fire, and the season's main villain has totally captured our arch-nemesis.
What? That escalated quickly.
So she promptly reminds him all about how he casually killed her Dr. Daddy that time he burst into their Firefly compound and shot up 17 nameless goons just to save his phony fakey kind of sort of daughter kid from sacrificing herself to save the world or some shit. But he just shrugs and says that was over 5 years ago now, so you should probably just get over it already, bitch. And besides, I just saved your life earlier when you were pissing about under a small fence and just inches away from becoming a living mushroom and stuff. But unfortunately, she too just shrugs and blows his frigging leg off already, before proceeding to do a hate crime and beat up an aging pensioner with a 9-iron. Meanwhile, Ellie and Jesse have heard shit going down over the patchy radio and head on back to Jackson to try and help out. But Ellie is soon distracted by spotting Joel and Dina's horses, and just can't believe it when she breaks into the gaff and finds a small woman beating Joel's meat. Steady. And she's soon easily disarmed and detained on the floor, leaving her to watch her cucked out kind of daddy guy get himself penetrated in the throat, but not in a good way. Steady. And I guess it's finally curtains for the Chilean version of Joel, given his actor is too busy starring in literally every other thing on screen nowadays, whilst also being tied up, preparing to be the face of the MCU for the next 10 years. As Ellie is left crying like a little bitch on the floor, and swearing bloody vengeance on this random group of randos who've just butchered her foster dad like a common hog. And before you can say, well, surely they won't just let her go and live, given she'll inevitably hunt him down for 5 years straight and kill him barbarically in revenge just like they all did here, they totally let her go and live, and promptly get the heck out of Dodge, and presumably just naively hoping she'll totally just shrug and let it go and shit. And we end with two characters who selfishly used up all the plot armour and thereby screwed poor Joel, somehow reuniting mostly unharmed in the aftermath of the town siege, as a bloodied Abby and co hike out of town, whilst poor Ellie and the gang just drag Joel's corpse back home like an unflushed turd. And that's it, that's the epi. Though my favourite part was seeing the guy who survived the first 20 years of the apocalypse by not trusting a single soul, now getting deaded when he finally tries to do a good deed again by helping yet another young girl in a time of need, but this time with it backfiring bigly. And now he just gets to join his genuine and authentic race-changed daughter kid, who was super good at geography but not so good at not getting shot or being remotely likeable, up in the little old cabin in the sky. Well, at least he now don't have to put up with chest pains, panic attacks, or literal communist relatives, nor ungrateful little sulky teens what look like human-grade alien hybrids for some reason anymore. But anyway, on to episode 3. We start in the aftermath of that shitstorm of epic proportions last epi, and only hours after that 5-foot woman pounded a man's brains out, but not in a fun way, as Tommy cleans up his brother's corpse and tells his spirit to say hi to his equally deaded race-changed daughter with the resting bitch face. Bruh. Whilst Ellie just wakes up in the local hozzy with severe PTSD and screaming and sweating like she's just had a dodgy beefy 5 layers at Taco Bell. After the opening titles, we cut to 3 months later, as Ellie gets some checkups and tells her bloody shrink that she's totally over the death of her phony fakey kind of sort of daddy guy, lol, trust me bro, because that was 3 months ago now and I want to get back to snogging that Dina bird already. And to prove she's indeed totally over all that trauma and tragedy, she just returns to their now empty house and totally bawls her eyes out over Joel's old clothes and possessions. Well, until Lesbo Crush Dina turns up and says stop doing that crying thing like a right cuck, because I've got some news for you, girl. Turns out she overheard all the names and general location of the group of naughty murderer killers what love getting Joel's in one. And she totally lied about having this knowledge back when Ellie asked her about it off screen 3 months ago in the hospital. And naturally, said Ellie Bird is super pissed, given she let them go and now they've lost so much time for the revenging and shit. But Dina just continues to describe some of the symbols and logos she saw that looks like the ones of the WLF, aka Washington Liberation Front. a regional group that used to fight the fascist state military goons of Fedra, and who are now operating out of Seattle. She reckons they're just a tiny small group of pussyholes, and this Abby Bird and her minority crew probably make up most of them anyway, so they can totally take them on their lonesome, bro. But Tommy warns her not to be rash and think things through for once, well given she's still recovering from PTSD and a small kick to the ribs. And besides, the council will have to vote on whether to send the remaining fighters they have that didn't just get munched up in the mutant flower zombie raid last epi, to now go and hunt down sadistic killers just to get revenge for a dead man 3 months ago, when their own community and physical infrastructure is still in tatters. Also naturally, no one's really up for intentionally going out cross country to start more beef with dangerous groups that seem to have just left them alone for months anyway. Especially when they already live in a post-apocalyptic hellscape and have to deal with human raiders and roided out mushroom monsters. And despite that homophobic bigot McGrump guy totally being based AF yet again and wanting to go out and get some sweet vengeance already, and Ellie also giving a pretty articulate and restrained speech about needing justice if only to send a message as a deterrent against future attacks, the council just sticks 2 fingers up and votes 8-3 against wasting resources on more death, destruction and general disaster.
Honestly, I don't blame them.
Meanwhile, some weirdo religious group of baldy pilgrims and scarred up ginger kiddies who love whistling to each other and talking about their beloved prophet who's been dead for 10 years because reasons, soon hide away in the bushes like riot cucks after a dodgy whistle warns of impending danger. Back in Jackson, Tommy confides in local alcoholic therapist Gail that he's super worried that kids these days no longer believe in democracy, and that Gen Zer with a heck of a forehead is going to take matters into her own hands and totally escalate beef with another group regardless of the outcome of that free and fair community vote. But Gail just shrugs and says she's 19 now and thus a bona fide adult, so she'll go and do what she wants, and no pussy-old Latino bloke with a shit ponytail is going to stop her. Later, as Ellie is indeed preparing to ignore the outcome of a democratic vote and throw the bedrock of Western values to the wind by heading out to kill Abby's group anyway, Dina turns up in her bedroom to tell her she's totally going with her. And good job and all, given she has a plan, a map and the right gear to last more than a day out in the wild, whilst all Ellie has is Joel's gun, a raging death wish and roughed up Converse trainers.
Not a great plan.
Anyway, after meeting up at 3 AM by the gate, that super bigoted far-right fascist homophobe guy appears and says even though you lot are scissor sisters, which disgusts me to my very core, and my half-assed apology last epi was indeed pretty hollow, I quite liked that Joel fella, and smashing his brains in with a golf club whilst giving little lesbians severe PTSD about it just ain't fucking on, son. But alas, he can't tag along like a super awkward third wheel because he's still injured from that zombie swarm a few months back. So he gives her his own special gun and just wishes the Gaylords luck with a handshake.
Aww.
On the way out, Ellie then pays a visit to Joel's grave and promptly vandalises it by tossing coffee beans all over the top. And no fair, because when I visited a local cemetery and spilled my beans all over a random grave, I just got done for a bloody hate crime and spent 3 years in the big house for public indecency and gross desecration.
What a fucking liberty!
Anyway, the girls then travel across country, totally hunting for their naughty arch nemesis what fucking loves a 9-iron, whilst eventually getting caught in a rainstorm and camping out in the night in close quarters with soaking wet panties. Steady. And Dina hilariously asks her lesbo chum to totally rate their kiss that night at the party. Presumably on a scale from Madonna and Britney back in the day to whatever the heck Kip and LaFonda were doing in Napoleon Dynamite that one time. Well, especially since she's kissed girls before. And before you can say, are we really expected to believe that out of the limited range of survivors in this post-apocalyptic world that there's just this large pool of teenage lesbians available in town to totally date and compare kisses to, she just rates her a mid-6 and goes off to sleep. LOL! The next morning, they come across a bunch of dead bodies, what turn out to be the religious baldy whistling peeps and their pet ginger kid with the Joker smile. And seems they've been executed and shot in the back whilst cucking out and running away again. And someone's even gone and desecrated their corpse by graffitiing their backs with weird symbols.
Weird.
And we end with the girls finally arriving in Seattle, whilst a disgruntled checkpoint spotter confirms it's safe for his colleagues of WLF goons to move up into the city. And soon seeming like that dopey Dina bird, totally underestimated the size of said group like, oh right Wally, and are likely about to get properly screwed by an entire army, son. And that's it, that's episode 3. Though my favourite part was trying to figure out why they seemingly took 3 months to bury Joel, rebuild the community and totally kept Ellie in hospital all that time, despite her only receiving a small kick to the ribs and some mental trauma. Or maybe it was just a production typo from a local diversity hire over at HBO and they really meant 3 weeks. But whatevs. That's a plot and that's your lot. Considering that bell thing so you don't miss the roast of episodes 4 and 5 when they drop. Tell me if you like this show in the comments if you have time. And I'll roast my lesbian friend in a small tent by telling her she sucks at snogging with you in the next one.